Hey everybody, happy Friday. Before we get into this, I want to apologize for the sound quality on my end in these podcasts lately. I'm trying to record from a different room to see if that'll make a difference. If it still sucks, just let us know. So anyway, today we are going to dive into what is going on with China. And I swear we kind of alluded to this in our Wednesday podcast about the next coming pandemic. And it's now been about a week that China is back in the news with what is being called a child pneumonia outbreak. And this was first made public on November 21st by ProMed, which is this large surveillance database that monitors disease outbreaks. And there was a Taiwanese news website called FTV News that reported large numbers of children were showing up at hospitals with a high fever and lung inflammation, but no cough. And then the following day, the WHO put out a statement about surging clusters of undiagnosed pneumonia in children in northern China, and they immediately demanded more information from Chinese health authorities about what was going on and whether or not this is related to another COVID outbreak. And Chinese health officials responded with data basically showing that this increase in children being admitted to hospitals is not due to COVID, but is due to general normal bacterial infections, RSV, the flu, and the common cold.
Oh, bullshit. And hold on a second, because didn't Bill Gates and the World Economic Forum say that there's going to be another pandemic that would target children? Like, I know that they did. I am going to talk about that in a minute, but this is freaking me out already because just like with COVID, I remember hearing about it like this, just kind of like, oh, there's something going on, and thinking, oh, at least it's in China and not here. And then like the next week we found out that like, yeah, no, it was already here. So this is really a little bit concerning.
Exactly, because it all sounds too familiar, right? And I have so much more. So within a week, this sickness has quickly spread to southern provinces in China from the north. Hospitals are becoming overwhelmed with high cases of children being very ill. Fever wards in hospitals throughout the country are full, and people are claiming that the symptoms are, surprise, surprise, very similar to COVID-19. So schools are being closed. Parents are reportedly saying they fear there's some kind of cover-up going on. And now even the CDC is questioning this sudden mysterious rash of pneumonia cases that seem to be mainly impacting children. Now, the CCP is claiming that the main illness is called mycoplasma pneumonia, which apparently is like a form of walking pneumonia. And they're saying it's not related to COVID-19. And the reason kids are getting sick is because this is the first winter that China hasn't enforced strict lockdown measures. So kids are experiencing what they're calling, quote, immunity debt from not being exposed to the cold and the flu over the past couple years. So now they're more vulnerable to illness. The South China Morning Post put out a report a few days ago that the government is being transparent and vigilant, and there's no need to panic. But according to an insider with knowledge of the top echelons of the CCP, Xi Jinping has reportedly given Beijing's top officials a secret directive to downplay the outbreak and avoid calling it COVID-19. The Epoch Times reported that according to this insider, quote, major foreign media outlets stationed in Beijing also received the order, which makes it clear that no interviews are allowed to report on the so-called mycoplasma pneumonia infections or influenza. Domestic media are also prohibited from making any comprehensive reports on this outbreak. That is just like pretending this never happened, end quote. I don't know about you, Stephanie, but this doesn't sound very transparent to me.
No, and they weren't transparent during the first outbreak. So why would they be transparent now?
Exactly. And so as these cases are spreading, China's top health officials are reportedly urging hospitals nationwide to extend their hours and set up more clinics. This insider reported that 2 major hospitals have already set up makeshift clinics just like they did during COVID, and that they're primarily being used to treat children receiving IV drip treatments. Domestic media reports have been showing long lines forming at pediatric hospitals, with some parents reporting that they've waited up to 8 hours for their kids to see a doctor. An unnamed citizen was interviewed and said that things are, quote, very bad now, end quote, and that all of the fever wards are full at the Shanghai Pediatric Hospital. The Epoch Times reported that medical staff at the Tianjin Children's Hospital outpatient and emergency departments are reportedly handling 10 to 12,000 visits a day. And I read another article that's now up to 13,000 visits a day. And Beijing's Children's Hospital has topped 7,000 patients a day. And for like these hospitals, it's all exceeding their capacity. There was a November 18th report by eNorth, a local media outlet backed by municipal government, that the Hongqiao Hospital has asked retired pediatric doctors to come back to work because of this surge in child, quote, pneumonia cases. The Messenger reported that Dailan Children's Hospital in the Jiang district of Liaoning, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing all of these places, but that hospital has been overwhelmed with child patients to the point where all staff members were removed from general outpatient clinics and assigned to the emergency department. There are also reports of hazmat workers out disinfecting the streets, and there's actually video footage circulating of this happening. And now there's the return of mask mandates and social distancing. And I also read an article in an online periodical called News, KNEWZ, and they said that China has reportedly stopped mentioning the cause of death in obituaries, which some people believe is an attempt to conceal the true death toll. And so on top of that, these kids who've been getting sick and being, we're being told that it's mycoplasma, they're testing negative for it. And a pediatric doctor working in Beijing who talked to reporters under a pseudonym basically stated that he doesn't believe the issue is mycoplasma pneumonia because he's tried to treat patients with all kinds of drugs specifically for mycoplasma pneumonia, and none of them have worked.
Well, yeah, and they're probably going to test negative for everything because this is probably another damn engineered virus. And these poor kids don't have any immune system because in China, they've been locked down and wearing masks this whole time.
Exactly. But you have China saying that everything's fine. And medical experts are saying there's no need to be concerned. There's no evidence that this like very bizarre increase in pediatric pneumonia cases is the start of a new pandemic. But ProMed, the organization I mentioned originally, they're basically like an international society for infectious disease. And they were also the agency that first reported the mysterious pneumonia that emerged in China that later became known as the COVID-19 pandemic a few years ago. And they've already labeled this new outbreak of yet another unknown pneumonia strain as an epidemic right now. So it's not unrealistic to think that another pandemic is on the horizon. And as we get closer and closer to the 2024 elections, it's like we talk about all the time, right? The Biden administration will find a way to either interfere with the election or declare a state of emergency to prohibit an election altogether, by means of like getting us directly involved in a war or a deadly pandemic. So I'm starting to wonder, like, is this the start of what's going to be the next lockdown, especially after Wednesday's episode where we talked about Governor Hochul, whatever the fuck her name is, who now basically has free reign to go ahead and institute quarantine camps in New York. And Stephanie, like you mentioned earlier about the World Economic Forum and Bill Gates saying it would be a pandemic targeting children. I don't know if we ever talked about this, but as always, I'm going to bring up Andy Frisella because he's been saying this, I don't know, at least a year now, that the next pandemic is going to purposely target children as a way to basically like turn the public against the people who don't comply, who say like don't comply with the lockdowns, because once people's kids start dying, they're going to blame the people who said not to comply. So I want to play this clip. This was from his show last Saturday, but I think it is a very powerful clip. So here we go.
So you got the WHO in there, okay? But it's okay, guys, because guess what? Mainstream media, they have all your answers, right? China's child pneumonia outbreak spread. We have everything you need to know on it. Now, how would you have everything that you need to know on it? It's something that's just not getting going. I think that's a very,
Well, how have I been talking about this for 1.5 years, 2 years, about this actually being a pandemic for children? I mean, there's only probably 20, 30, fucking 50 clips of me saying this exact thing.
Oh, Andy, no, bro. Listen, AP fact checked that. There was a fictional virus that was created for training exercise, not for another pandemic.
Oh, okay. So the AP's credible.
Yeah, it was just for So like that training event they called catastrophic contagion, where they had that thing called Sears, right? That the exercise simulated a series of World Health Organization emergency health advisory board meetings addressing a fictional pandemic that was set in the near future. That
disproportionately affecting children and young people.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, the one that actually said there would be 20 million plus child deaths.
Mm-hmm.
Who said this? Who said that they were going to run a pandemic that affected children that then was going to actually kill children so that they could blame all the people that they are saying caused all the problems last time?
First, it was grandma killers.
Yeah. Now it's kid killers. Yeah, but here's the problem. My opinion, I've said this plenty of times in the show. In fact, we should probably go find a couple of the clips and throw them in here. So if you're on their team, you can't lose, because if you lose, it's your life. And if we're trying to figure out a plan on how to not lose, here's how you do it. You test everybody like what they're doing right now. Say, well, where are we at with people? Yeah. Are they going to wear masks again? Are they going to line up and get this vaccine again? Yeah. What are they going to do? How scared are they still? All right. Then we take the temperature. That's what I believe this is. Mm-hmm. Then we release something that actually kills people. Now they ran one called Sears, and in the Sears pandemic, 20 billion kids die. All right. Now, if you were trying to control the population and you were talking about this in public, like Bill Gates does, do you think that it would advance your agenda if 20 billion kids died, a whole generation of kids in certain places? Would that advance it? It sure would. Now, what do we do with the people who are calling bullshit? Well, we can make them the enemy, because if we release this thing and these people are saying, hey, resist, do not comply, then it's their fault that the kids die. Yep. Then they criminalize those people, remove them from society. They put them in camps or they execute them. And then they run the world because there is no resistance anymore. That's what I see their plan to be. If it actually kills children, their plan might work.
Yeah.
And that's the fucking danger. Like, I think these people would kill 20 million children to keep from what will happen to them if they lose power from happening.
Yeah.
I mean, does anybody think that? I mean, I think that.
I think they'll absolutely do it. I mean, now,
what would that do to the parents of the people who have been calling bullshit on the pandemic for 2020 and 2021, 2022, and who are now saying, do not comply, do not let them do this again? What would that do to those people? Well, it would create a situation where they would legitimately try to round those people up and fucking kill them. And you would have public support because people's kids are dying. Mm-hmm. And these people wouldn't realize that these people killed their kids just to remove the only obstacle between them and total control, which is the people who are going to say no.
Okay, so that was like a clip within a clip, right? It was a clip from Saturday where he talked about something he said like over a year ago. And like, Stephanie, what do you think?
I totally agree with him. That makes complete sense. It's terrifying as a parent, but I mean, how many times have we said they will stop at nothing to make sure that this next election goes how they want it to and to fulfill this global agenda? So I 100% agree with him that they would do something horrendous like this. And that's an interesting perspective that he gives. But, it's like when you start messing with people's kids, people do anything to protect their kids. Right. And as he was talking, I'm thinking about this whole like gender affirming stuff. Like, what if it was all a test where they were like testing people to see like how far will you go to protect your kid from being mutilated? Like, this is just fucking scary. But what he was talking about in the beginning was this real simulation that they held. They had a whole event in Belgium with the World Economic Forum called the Catastrophic Contagion Event. And they said that they're predicting, how would they know? But they're predicting there's going to be another pandemic by 2025 and it'll target children. So like the whole question is like, how do they know? And how do they get this stuff right? And like this simulation was crazy. Like they even put together a whole fake news segment about the contagion spreading. And of course, they discussed, you know, the vaccines that are just going to be like readily available. So it's like clearly they're focused on how they'll all profit from exposing the world to a contagion. And then I saw like an entirely separate video clip of Bill and Melinda Gates. This was like a while back before they were divorced. And they were talking about how the next one, meaning like the next pandemic, we won't be able to ignore it. And they both had this like sinister smirk on their face. They were like literally smiling when saying that. I mean, these people are just pure evil. And so I'm going to play a clip from Bill Gates himself explaining, telling us straight up like what is coming next.
As urgent now as the threat from climate change?
Well, they're very different. You know, climate change just gets worse every year as long as you continue emissions. A pandemic, we're likely to go a fair period of time without either a naturally or intentionally caused pandemic. But when it does strike, you know, we saw tens of millions of lives and tens of trillions of dollars. Fortunately, the cost to be ready for the next pandemic is rounding error compared to what it takes to retool the modern economy to solve climate change. So, you know, preparation for earthquakes, pandemics, governments are responsible for their people's welfare. And so a modest investment should make us able to not have a severe pandemic.
Okay, number one, did you catch how he said intentionally caused pandemic?
Yep.
Like it's so in our face, it's unbelievable. And that would explain how a computer guy knows what's coming next in the world of infectious disease, right? If it's an intentionally caused pandemic. And obviously you can't see that video the whole time. He's smiling, like he's getting joy out of like, oh, you know, we need to plan. Like he's like giddy, like excited about this or something. And why? Why would he be excited about that? Well, he has a motive. He's saying in that clip that the governments will have to spend a lot of money preparing for the next pandemic because, you know, they're responsible for the well-being of their citizens as well as mitigating climate change. Well, let's think about this. What does Bill Gates have a stake in? Pharmaceuticals, especially vaccines, farms, and genetically modified food, all perfect for both pandemic and climate change. So like this guy is pure evil. I'm convinced of it. He is going to profit off of this. And he's been telling us exactly what he's going to do. Now, the other interesting thing is I didn't put this together until this whole thing in China happened with the pneumonia. But I'm just wondering if he's not like in cahoots with China, because just in May of this year, and I'm going to mess up this name, but there was a Xinguancun forum, and he said that we weren't prepared for the last pandemic and how China, with its manufacturing capabilities, will make sure that all tools will get out to everyone in the world. And it's like he's feeding us their entire playbook. How, you know, oh, like this is coming and we have to spend all this money on it. And we need to partner with China because they have the capability to make all this stuff really quickly. Like it's unfucking believable. And it's like, just like we were saying, they didn't get full compliance with COVID-19. But again, they know when it comes to people's children, they will take every measure to keep them safe. If there's a virus out there that's attacking children, people are going to take it seriously. And as a parent, this scares the shit out of me because I wouldn't put it past them. I absolutely believe they will do anything to keep control and start with the lockdowns and put those quarantine camps into good use that we talked about last week. And like, if you think that I'm some crazy conspiracy theorist, just remember Event 201, which was another simulation that they did just 5 months prior to the COVID pandemic, saying that there would be this outbreak of SARS-CoV. So when they hold these simulations, we need to take them seriously and pay attention, because they're basically telling us what they're going to do next.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like people will say, oh, this is a conspiracy theory. It's right there in black and white. It's on their fucking website. Like every move the World Economic Forum makes is either in writing on a website, in an interview with Bill Gates. Like they're not trying to hide any of this shit, and people just aren't paying attention. But I want to bring up something else that I found interesting. So the CCP Ministry of Foreign Affairs suddenly announced last week on November 24th that they're going to start allowing unilateral visa-free entry into the country for travelers from France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Spain, and Malaysia. And I believe that's actually starting today, December 1st. So citizens from these countries are going to be able to stay in China for 15 days for, quote, business, tourism, family visit, and transit purposes to further facilitate cross-border travel and China's high-quality development and high-standard opening up, end quote. Like, Stephanie, don't you find this rather strange that China is suddenly offering visa-free travel in the middle of a massive outbreak of undiagnosed pneumonia cases that are primarily targeting children?
No, nothing fishy about that at all. You know, I was going to ask you earlier when you had said that they talked about this pneumonia thing being an epidemic. And I was thinking, like, doesn't it become a pandemic when it spreads to like other continents or whatever? And then you say this. And so it's like, oh, okay. So they're like trying to facilitate this spreading all over the place. And like, just think about it, traveling, even under normal circumstances, it takes a toll on the immune system. So it's like the perfect way to get everyone sick and bring it back to their home country. And then boom, you've got a pandemic. I think it's especially suspicious that China is doing this because, again, like they were so strict with their lockdowns around COVID. So if there was an outbreak, you would think they wouldn't allow this. They would lock everything down again. So it's just like very suspicious. And this is really scaring me right now because my son is sick right now with these same exact symptoms. And so immediately I'm thinking, like, is it already here? You know, it's terrifying.
Well, I read an article in Express Online yesterday, and there's a health expert named Dr. Veronica Matutite, probably said that wrong, Matutite. She's predicting that the cities that are going to be hit the hardest if this pneumonia continues to spread are going to be London, Paris, Frankfurt, and Amsterdam. So obviously London's like a huge hub for international travel, and how oddly coincidental that France, Germany, and the Netherlands are 3 of the 6 countries that China's inviting to visit on their visa-free travel adventure, right? And so Dr. Matutite stated, quote, these cities are not just transit hubs, they also host large, densely populated areas, which can facilitate the spread of respiratory infections, end quote. And we're already seeing several countries in Europe reporting that cases of pneumonia in children are rising over the past week. There was an article in the Mirror that talked about how the Netherlands Institute for Health Services Research reported that 103 out of every 100,000 children in the country between the ages of 5 and 14 came down with pneumonia last week. And this is the biggest outbreak recorded by the Institute in several years. The Epoch Times also reported, according to a November 19th update from the Korean Agency for Disease Control and Prevention, 226 out of 236 hospitalized patients across the country with bacterial infections have mycoplasma pneumonia. That's 96% of patients. And that most of the patients are under 12 years old, with 80% of new infections being children under 5. France has also reported increased cases of mycoplasma pneumonia infections in children under 15, and this is reportedly the worst infection rates that they have seen there in over a decade.
This is scary. And like, I've been seeing so many people post about this on TikTok, not about like this, but just saying like, have you noticed how like everyone is sick. Like everyone's got this, and it's like the same symptoms. And then, there's all these people that are like, oh, it's just flu season. Everyone gets sick this time of year. But like maybe it's all tied together. Maybe there is something that's here already that we don't even realize because they're downplaying it and they're not being honest. And this is the first time when you brought this up, this was the first time I heard about it. It's not like it's everywhere right now. And like, keep in mind that COVID hit the US, so they say, in March of 2020, but now we know it likely was here months earlier. So, I mean, I think whatever this is, it very well could be here already. And if it's not, with this whole China travel thing, I'm sure it will be very soon, right in time for the holidays. So, I mean, everyone should definitely stock up on zinc and vitamin D. That was what I learned during this whole pandemic. Like since 2020, every single time I feel like I'm coming down with something, I take zinc and vitamin D and it goes away before it gets bad. So like, don't listen to their bullshit about vaccines. Get yourself some zinc, some vitamin D. Look up your grandmother's like homemade recipes. I swear that shit works way better than any, manufactured technological drug that Bill Gates is out there making.
Yeah. This is crazy shit. And like, we'll keep an eye on this because I don't imagine this going away.
Yeah, no, this does not sound good, but I'm glad we're getting ahead of it so we can like prepare, because now I don't really want to take my kids to like a play place area, like, and put them where there's like a gazillion germs, just being a little extra cautious and then getting some like zinc and vitamin D, just in case. Good God. Okay. Well, happy Friday, everyone. Stay safe. Protect your immune system, and we'll keep you posted. We'll stay on top of this and let you know as it develops. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here on